Kimmie sat on the floor in the corner of her darkened dorm room and stared down at her phone. Her hands were hot, sweaty, making the phone slick. She wiped her runny nose with her free hand and started biting a ragged fingernail. Finally, she quickly tapped in a number and clicked the speaker button. Instead of a ringing, a high-pitched whine pierced her ears, followed by a computerized voice informing her that the number she had called was no longer in service. A wave of anger and frustration swept over her, and she slammed the phone down onto the floor, smashing one of her fingers. "Shit," she hissed between gritted teeth. She pulled her knees up to her chest, dropped her head onto them, and let hot tears fall from her eyes. After a moment, she snatched the phone and looked at the number she had dialed. She realized that she had typed the incorrect number. Shit! She dialed again and listened, her heart pounding, tears dripping from her chin. As the line on the other end connected and started to ring, she nervously looked around the dark room. The thick, black shadows were unaffected by the feeble glow of a streetlight that shone in through the window. They coalesced around her in a black shroud. Someone picked up on the other end of the line after 3 rings. There was a pause that lasted only a heartbeat, but to her it seemed as if an eternity passed before anyone spoke. "Hello? How can I help you?" The voice was soft, concerned. It was the voice of a man. It was pleasant. Kimmie pressed the phone hard against her ear, unconsciously leaning into the kind voice. She felt the merest glimmer of hope at hearing his pleasant, almost familiar tone. He was patient, waiting a moment before gently pushing. "Hello? Is there anyone there?" "Yes," she replied hesitantly, attempting to keep her own voice from cracking. She took a breath, wiped the tears from her face, and forced herself to stop crying. "You sound upset. Please, tell me how I can help you. You don't have to give me your name. Just talk, and I'll listen. Okay?" His voice was soothing and friendly. It made her feel a little more comfortable. "This is so hard," she said, struggling to keep from crying again. I don't think this is going to help." "My name is Stan, and you can do this," he encouraged her. "If you give me a chance, I know I can help you." "Well, I feel as if my life is falling apart," she offered quickly. She decided to go along with this for at least a few minutes. "I see," Stan prodded. "Go on." "Well, I just don't think I can, cope with all that's happening." The urge to cry was growing stronger. She squeezed her eyes tightly together. One tear escaped and rolled down her cheek. It left a thin, wet trail. "There's just so much going wrong. It's like too much to deal with. I just can't handle it." "And you need to talk to someone to get it out in the open," Stan said. "You need someone with a solution, right?" "Well, yes, I do need help. I hope that maybe you can give me some advice. I don't have anyone who cares that I have these problems. There's no one I can talk to about what has happened to me, what is still happening." She was crying again, softly. The tears were chasing each other down her cheeks and falling from her chin onto her lap. "I want to hear your problems. Just open up and tell them to me." Stan's sympathetic voice was a caressing whisper in her ear. "Just open up and tell them to me. The rest will be easier." "You see, my professor has been, She began crying harder. "We had an affair." Now she began to sob uncontrollably. "Go on," Stan prodded. "He was supposed to divorce his wife," she said, taking deep breaths, attempting to regain her composure. "He didn't. He led me on. He used me. And I can't tell anyone. There's no hope. No one that can help me. I can't take it anymore." "What about your parents?" "My dad left when I was a teenager. and my mom died a few months ago. The memory of her mother lying cold in her casket clawed its way to the front of her mind. Kimmie pursed her lips together, choking back a sob. "Can't you go to anyone at school?" Stan asked. "What about the dean? Someone in authority needs to know that your professor was involved in an inappropriate relationship." "I can't go to the administration," Kimmie said. "Why not? I'm sure they've had to deal with situations like this before." "He says he has a video of us. He says that if I tell anyone, he'll post the video on the internet." "Ah, I see," Stan sighed. "So he has all the leverage." "Yes," she said in a small, broken voice. She was humiliated to admit this intimate secret, and she dropped her head back down onto her knees. "Oh, God, what can I do? I want to die. I just want to kill myself." "And you don't think that is a good idea?" Kimmie was so inwardly focused that she did not immediately realize what Stan had just said. However, she did notice that the quality of his voice had changed. It confused her, but she couldn't hang up. She desperately hoped that he could help her find a way out of her miserable situation. What do you mean by that?" she asked. "How old are you?" Stan asked, ignoring her question. His tone was no longer soothing. It had an edge, like the blade of a flensing knife. 20, Kimmie said, not knowing why she didn't just hang up now that Stan's demeanor had changed. "So, you haven't been at college long," Stan said. "You're what, a sophomore?" "Yes," Kimmie said. Her voice was shivery and small. "What does that matter?" "I'm just thinking your story is so cliché," Stan said. "Young college girl with daddy issues, hooking up with her professor for higher grades that she can't earn on her own intellectual merits because she's not quite smart enough." Kimmie chided herself. "Just hang up." Instead, she said, "Why are you so mean? Aren't you supposed to help me?" "I am helping you, you little piece of trash. I'm trying to show you that you're weak and worthless and apparently can't make good life decisions. I'm trying to get you to see that you need to suck it up and deal with your problems instead of calling some stranger to make you feel better about the fact that you prostituted yourself out for good grades." "It's not like that," Kimmie cried. "It wasn't for grades. It just happened. I'm not a prostitute." She was now getting angry, on the verge of losing what little control she still had over herself. "So tell me," Stan commanded, "how then does your story stray from the cliché? I bet it doesn't. You were making good grades so long as you were hooking up with your professor. Then you fell in love and started talking about building a life together. Then your grades dropped and he dumped you. Am I right?" She didn't know why she didn't just hang up. She knew she could. All she had to do was disconnect the call and get up and leave the dorm room and get on with her life. But for some reason, she felt she deserved Stan's abuse for how terribly she had screwed up her life. She felt deserving of her pain and suffering. She felt helpless. "Tell me," Stan commanded. "Am I right, you stupid piece of trash?" Kimmie felt a surge of shame. "I hate myself," she said. "Oh, wait," Stan said. "I sense it's something a bit more than the fact that he dumped you. Could it be you found out he was hooking up with more than one student?" She hated herself for being so naive and getting into a relationship with her professor. She hated herself for being so fragile and getting hurt in the process. But she didn't know what she hated more. The fact that she had made such terrible decisions, or that she couldn't just hang up this stupid phone. "How many more girls was he hooking up with?" Stan asked. 3, Kimmie said. She wiped at the tears that had been streaming down her face. "So, because you're such a weak, pathetic piece of trash, you hoped you could just call someone and they'd tell you everything was going to be okay. You didn't even attempt to learn anything from hooking up with your professor, did you? Instead of changing your life, you called here hoping for absolution. Am I correct? Yes, Kimmie whispered. She realized that she was no longer crying. She was soul numb and out of tears. Well then, at least now we're making some progress, Stan said. At least you understand your motivations for this call. So let me play along. I, Father Stan, have heard your confession, child. To be absolved of your sin, all you have to do is remove yourself from your miserable existence. Why are you doing this to me? Kimmie said, her voice tiny, defeated. I thought this was the school's suicide prevention helpline. Why are you doing this? This is the school's helpline, Stan said. But instead of getting some bleeding heart psych student who thinks he can change the world by telling you that you're not responsible for your actions, you got me, babe. And it's your lucky day, because in only a few minutes, I've helped you understand that you made some bad decisions. It's your fault and nobody else's. It's not even a mistake that is new and interesting. Your whole life is a cliche. You're unoriginal and boring and will only continue to take up space and resources on this world that could go to those of us who are smarter. So, my advice to you, as your spiritual advisor and counselor, is that you just go ahead and end it. Get it over with. Rid the world of your worthlessness. Well, I might as well be dead, she yelled into the phone. Then people like you and my professor wouldn't be able to take advantage of me. See? Stan said, still thinking you were a victim instead of listening to what I've said and taking responsibility. Go ahead. Kill yourself. Kimmie was shaking, not from anger or fear, but from a coldness that originated deep in her soul. Okay, she whispered. At the utterance of that single word, the shadows seemed to slither around her, and she felt a profound emptiness settle over her. How would you do it? How would you kill yourself? She could hear the excitement in Stan's voice. It made her feel even more hollow. I don't know, she murmured. Come on now, Stan said. I know you've thought about it, and I bet how you end your life will be as cliche as you've lived it. Let me guess. Either pills or the razor. Which is it? She suddenly had a deep revelation, and the hope inside her, if there ever was any, was now completely gone. She now understood that the world she lived in was evil, purely and simply. There was no hope for this sick and dying world. It was over. A razor, she whispered. Ah, nice and boring, Stan said. Whatever. Do it now then. I want to listen. No, Kimmie murmured. I won't give you that satisfaction. She disconnected the call and let the phone slip from her hands onto the floor. She stood and shambled into the bathroom, not noticing that the shadows seemed to grasp at her heels. She fumbled the switch on the wall and squinted against the harsh fluorescent light. There were no more tears, just emptiness. She reached an unsteady hand toward the medicine cabinet above the rust-stained sink and pulled on the mirrored door. She grabbed the package of razor blades that she kept to refill her shaver and opened it, slicing her finger badly. The blood dripped off her finger into the sink. She closed the medicine cabinet and saw herself in the mirror. The sight startled her. Dark circles rimmed her eyes, and the tears had left her face smeared with makeup like some suicidal clown. However, what startled her the most was not her image. It was the emptiness in her eyes. I have no soul, she thought. She stumbled back into the dark bedroom and dropped heavily on the floor beside the phone. She looked down at the razor in her left hand and sighed. She took the sharp end of the razor and put it against her right wrist. She hesitated for a moment, then gritted her teeth and pushed the razor down. A thin red line followed the razor across her wrist, then turned into a flowing crimson gash. She quickly took the razor in her right hand and sliced her left wrist even more deeply than the right. She leaned against the wall of the darkened room as if in a trance. She put her hands down to her sides and stared at her, life flowing from her body. She was becoming very sleepy. She was surprised that it hadn't really hurt, just a little sting. This thought passed through her mind as her eyes became so heavy they felt as if each weighed a ton. She was quickly losing consciousness. After a few minutes, her ears began to ring. Slowly, she came to realize that it was the phone that was ringing, not her ears. With great effort, she opened her eyes and looked at the phone. She could barely move, and she knew that she was dying. The phone kept ringing. It sounded shrill, urgent. Suddenly, she realized through her dying haze that she had made another mistake. She didn't want to die. She wanted to live. She wanted to have another chance at life. She was so tired, so very tired, but felt a small surge of energy course through her at the idea of surviving this terrible decision and having one more chance to create a life worth living. She wanted to answer the phone and ask whoever was on the other end for help. The phone stopped ringing for a slow heartbeat and then rang again. She reached for it, forcing herself to hope. This nearly took her last ounce of energy to accomplish, and she fell onto her side into one of the growing pools of blood. She pulled the phone toward her and put it against her ear. "Hello," she slurred. Her voice was a low, hoarse whisper. "Help." "Well, it seems that you did it," Stan said. A twisted glee infected his voice. "Don't hang up. I want to listen."